Good morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started because we have a meaty topic this morning that could take up every minute of available time, so we don't want to delay. If people come in a little bit late, that's not a problem. I also think we'll probably have a little bit of a smaller crowd since summer is here and people are taking vacations and so forth. So welcome, everyone. See if I can advance my slides. Here we go. So here's our agenda, quick high level. And we'll start first with introductions, like we always do, and maybe we'll just go ahead and start first with Heather, who's on the phone, and anyone else who might be on the line.
Can you hear me okay, Mindy?
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry, I'm Heather Carlson. I'm actually just out of the state, so thanks for including me. And I work for Children with Special Health Care Needs Integrated Services Program as a nurse.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the line?
No, there's only Heather.
Okay. All right, so and of course, I'm Mindy. I should have started with that. I'm Mindy Tueller, and I manage the Medical Home Portal, and I facilitate this meeting for those of you who might not know me, but I think I know most of you, or we've seen each other before. So, all right, so do you want to start with Chelsea?
I'm a project consultant for Harder.
I'm Gabi Baraguchi. I'm a QI coach for UCCCN and the audio technician for today.
Kate Colbath, Quality Improvement Analyst at the Hemophilia Treatment Center at Primary Children's Hospital.
I'm Tom Thomas, the care coordinator with Health Center Utah. I'm Jan Boker, I'm the care manager at Memorial. I'm one of the QI coaches with UCCCN with Gabi.
I'm Kimberly Menwright. I'm a medical support specialist at the Developmental Assessment Clinic.
I'm medical director of Children's Special Health. I'm Becca. I'm the care coordinator at the UCCCN Clinic.
I'm Patty.
I'm Jada. I'm a pediatric care manager.
I'm Dan Braun with Blackback Pediatric.
Oh, sorry.
Go, Noemi.
Noemi Gay with Willow Creek Pediatric.
I'm Kay James with the Medical Home Portal.
Jada Solomon, you have family voices.
And Cindy, you want to introduce yourself quick?
Cindy, I'm the care coordinator at Grove Grade
Great.
and Lynn from UPIC.
I'm Michelle from Willow Creek Pediatric.
Great, welcome everyone. Fabulous. All right. Okay, so we always start with a few minutes of sharing anything that might be new and wonderful or also difficult and troublesome. And so this is an opportunity for you guys to kind of look to one another and ask for some support if you're having some difficulty helping find resources for the families that you're working with or anything else that might be going on in your environment that you'd like to share and get support with. So I know it always feels like I put you on the spot at this point, but this really is your time. So feel confident that you can ask anything at this point, and not, this is what we're here for, is to help support you. So yeah.
Okay, so I have kind of a difficult case I've been working on. So this is a child, an 8-year-old child that was adopted at birth. They have a kind of specialty stigma insurance, like a private insurance. The child has, the mom calls them the ABC child. They have 10 diagnoses, including autism, very severe autism. Behavioral issues, ADHD, anger, oppositional defiance. I mean, lots of things going on. So he's been coming to our office, but he kicks and fits, and like he belongs to the whole program. And so then we went the route of trying to get Medicaid, but the family makes fist over what they could. And so because of their private stigma insurance, they can't even get AP therapy. They've been kicked out of like 4 or 5 different psychologists and psychiatrist offices. Nate Rich has been managing their meds, but he's kind kind of like, gosh, we need to really get somebody else. He's been in and out of uni, and he's supposedly an angel at uni. He shows up at uni, and he is like, just sits there, and he's an angel child. So they have a hard time with men. It's like the mom loves the people at uni, but she doesn't feel like they get a really good look at what happens. He's dangerous at home. He throws things around, and he's out of control. And so they have a therapist that they have a special arrangement. So they have therapists that come in, but they're not doing any therapy with them. And then I'm still trying to have them apply for Medicaid, even though they've been kind of discouraged. But I talked to the director of the home program, and he was like, maybe they could do like a sliding scale where they apply. But so that's kind of where we're at. I just think it's smallish, so they need help, and I don't know what else to do for them.
So the home program is the ideal place as far as you can tell.
Yeah.
And so the issue there is that that's for Medicaid.
That's
And,
right.
Okay. Anyone have any ideas? Oh, that's terrible. No, but it's too much, but not enough.
Yeah. We're talking like 5,000 over what they're, you know what I mean? Like, and then his medical bills, like they're barely even paying on because his medical bills are so high. It's just, it's such that they're kind of stuck in this.
I don't know how a spin down works, but would that help at all?
Yeah, so that's kind of what they're applying for. So they will apply for Medicaid, and they can buy into Medicaid maybe $100 and $150 a month to receive then all those services. But they've been like, I talked to someone in the Medicaid office that they feel it might not be cost effective somehow, but I'm trying to have them do that.
Yeah, the spend down, they have to spend down to whatever that poverty level is, and it may be more than what ADA would cost them. But the thing to have them do is make sure when they're applying for Medicaid, they're asking for disability Medicaid because income assets are looked at just a little bit differently, and go that route.
Yeah, and I even thought that Medicaid, the disability Medicaid didn't look at all the child, and it's like only the child's income, but that's not the case.
No, they look at the whole, it's the same thing, it's just a different category.
Maybe like a little bit higher.
The ones that don't look at are the waivers. So the other thing is to make sure you've got so many diagnoses that they are applying for the SPD. They are calling because they're in a critical, and they may be able to help with some, they have some critical needs funding. Yeah, but it's that the family is going to be. Yeah, that would definitely be.
Yeah, so it's kind of like one of those insurances that can step up for the LED therapy, and they don't have one that is it's through their employer.
It's probably self-funded, so they do not have to go by that.
They don't go by the mandate at all. I just want to do the policy for their child.
What's doing Really? On the exchange, I'm not sure if it was on the exchange. Would it be hard for you to find out that information? It seems like I look that up. Yeah, let me know.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, do you know what I'm not sure.
I would, one, the school could help, make help with that. And then two, if he's doing all right at school, kind of leaves me more attached to what's going on. If he's an angel at So it's not a relationship. And
As long
that's
as
just
other
after that.
things because of her own and her,
I don't know about ignorant or anything, but you know anything about Valley behavioral health intensive stage?
I don't know much about it.
I don't know a lot about it either, but I know the director of Valley Mental Health, and they have. So he would fall in the range. So if you go to Valley Behavioral Health, kids intensive day services, or just go to Valley Behavioral Health for there's adults and there's kids, I would probably check into that. I haven't visited that site yet. It's on my list. But it's run by Valley. It also runs school and other services for kids, and it maybe that it's a really good place for him. It's not education.
Is this like a temporary day program?
I'm not looking it up. There's a short-term intensive day program for age 5 to 17 with serious behavioral and emotional challenges, with keeping kids in their family community. And so I think it'd be interesting at least to be able to talk to them and see what services they have to offer, and it might be good for them to even come here and talk to the group. So maybe find that out.
So Valley, yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth a phone call. It's like their primary, primary is probably the wrong word, but they are the Salt Lake County provider for through, there's Optum and there's Valley who provide for public services, but they don't say no. I'm sure there are hoops to jump through with regard to someone who has their private insurance, but definitely worth a look, because it sounds like even if the home program becomes an option at some point, it's not in the near future, not in the immediate future anyway, so something between now and then. So yeah, I would just ask for their unfunded services if they won't take their insurance. Because, if they do, they use for the carve out for Medicaid. So if they're not Medicaid and they won't take their limited insurance, then they can have it. And the portal does have quite a number of ABA therapy service providers on here, and it's just a question of whether or not they would do something on a sliding scale, and if that makes sense to try and do something maybe short term. I don't know if that could be more problematic if it's only for a few months, but it sounds like if something needs to be done.
Some of the APA services have like scholarship programs, and people are messed around. Even that is
If they were eligible, there's always the United Foundation grant that they have applied for that would pay for ABA. So that might be another. I think it is somewhat income-based, but I think it really appeals to when they can, with the treatment plan.
And that money's available even if they have insurance. If they have insurance and have, if they qualify, they can still get that $1,500 through United to help cover those services.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a few ideas for sure. Okay, and we can continue looking into this as well. Won't take that time right now, but we'll shoot what we find out as well. So the one thing that I always, since hearing more about ACEs, I always kind of come back to this idea of whether or not there's, adverse childhood events that have shaped some of this behavior and trauma, and whether or not a trauma-trained therapist would also be one more thing, right, that Sally needs to address, but I don't know. That was what was kind of popping up in the back of my head.
So Mom mentioned that I just remember a child it's a reactive attachment disorder, but they were adopted at birth, so someone gives them that in utero, and I guess I'm kind of, I know.
Don't know what happened.
There were at birth adoption, so like moms had a child from birth.
In the family?
No, they have another one. Yeah,
You don't know the birth parents might have been using to
Yes, that's right. So can I hope incarcerated and have nutrition and drugs about
That is very complicated. Oh, wow. Goodness gracious. Okay, well, hopefully.
yeah. It's been hard because he's kind of had like diarrhea for like a month. It has come in for 2 appointments, and he has climbed the walls and kicks and spit and like somebody in the stomach and he can't help, you know, the doctor can't help it that it's suffering. He does not belong in children.
And how long do some of these processes take with regard to like figuring out Medicaid options? I mean, if there was a way to fit them in there, about how long do you think that might take?
So you could even start on Medicaid disability days, see if there's a possibility. There is one place that I was just made aware of last week. It's called Matt's Place. I don't know if you've heard of that. And I went and did a field trip there last week. And they have the psychiatrist on, you know, and medication management in the same place. They do not take Medicaid, so they would have to see it. They would take their Cigna or do a sliding scale. But it's not going to be close.
They don't take it.
They don't. Okay.
They're very limited.
They are very limited, but they have an awesome program going on.
That sounds wonderful. Okay, well, hopefully that'll help, you know, go through really help. Anybody else have anything they're struggling with and want to bring up? Any other cases?
I have a quick question. Young man, severe asthma, non-controlled, non-compliant, parents with meds, smoky environment, frequent flyer for the ERs that he goes to the ER. Probably so he can't be identified. Did come in for an appointment, was supposed to have a follow-up appointment. No phone numbers work. Even, I mean, it's a complicated social situation he's living with. Not even true stepdad, past boyfriend and past boyfriend's grandparents. And anyway, I mean, I cannot contact the family. I can't find the family just to get them to come back in. Yeah, who knows? Is there any alerts you can put out? So when he comes in, that they don't just, you know, treat him in 3 days here, that they actually make him set up an appointment with pulmonology, or you know what I mean? Sometimes the insurance can't, and because they will be able to see everywhere that the child is going by the claims, and so sometimes they can reach out and they, you know, if they don't have current information, they can contact all the places to find out what kind of information to hear.
But do you know who the insurance?
He's Medicaid.
Medical neglect.
Yeah, I'm wondering, can I send them out even, I'm not even sure what address he's at, to be honest with you. I think I know what address he's at, but I can't reach anybody by phone, grandfather. But
the term for that? Like
Well child, you can send them out on a well child check.
that's with police.
You can also call Medicaid and ask for their address and phone number. We've had to do that before because they usually have the most current, and if you're the provider, they'll give it to you.
And I think the address that I have is correct, but like the phone number is fine and subscribers showing or not accepted.
Oh, sometimes though, if they hear that it's Medicaid that's calling, sometimes they still will answer or return the call, but sometimes they will return the call because they realize that they don't have Medicaid and they have to pay for all of it.
So I can call the police if you, sounds like you could call the police and ask them to do a well child check. Call Medicaid and ask what phone number and address they have. And you could conceivably call DCFS as well. I'm not sure, probably Medicaid first, and then maybe the police second, I don't know.
Well, depending on the type of Medicaid, if it's bullying or a split health, they may have a case manager there that can also reach out. Sometimes we have they get to them quicker than we do in the office, because it is kind of linked with the insurance.
And we can do home visits, the university also can do home visits and actually stay with them. Sometimes they just don't have, if their phone no longer has minutes, if their government,
That's a good idea. Yeah. Someone who maybe cares a little bit more about the home first. That's tough. It breaks your heart.
Well, we kind of had a similar thing just happen, only this child was a diabetic, non-compliant parent, and really worried about this child. So we contacted the diabetes clinic, kind of talked to them, and the lady that called me back said, because it's a child and the parents are responsible for the well-being of that child, she said when that happens here, we call DCFS. She says when it has to do with the medical health of the child, we don't even mess around. If they're non-compliant, we call DCFS. So, I mean, you hate to do that,
Right.
but she said it's out of the child's hand. The child's getting sicker, the child's having, is going to end up with who knows what, and she said we just don't, she goes, we try to contact, we give every effort to try to contact the parents and get them to comply, but when we see that it's not happening, she says our focus is the child.
It sounds like the parents already aren't involved, right?
Well, I mean, minimally, they'll do one of his enablers, and they won't give him his controller. And so sometimes they'll go through the ER. The last time he went, I was appointed at primary school. He went through the ER, and I don't know which ER doc was, but just treated him, and he didn't look at any of the past stuff that he had been there for. And then as in looking, he record, he's been through a few other hospitals and clinics. But he's been in the ICU twice. So the last visit to the ER was not that severe. He didn't end up being admitted, but it's like, okay, how come he did not leave with, an appointment? I'm not saying they go to the appointment, but, some other, to follow up with your primary care physician, hopefully. Maybe over 2 to 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, did you hear that for the notes? So Rachel was saying that the care or case managers in the primary children's emergency department can be on alert to look for this child coming in, and then they'll be proactive about helping to set up appointments and get that.
If we have a meeting, I can talk to them directly.
And that's really good to know too.
I'd just like to piggyback a little bit on the DCFS stuff. You mentioned that other clinic will call them immediately. You don't really have to worry about, too much about, one call to DCFS doesn't go take their kids away. In fact, it takes so much.
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes it's just making the paper trail, you know, and it's not going to be detrimental. A lot of really good parents have ECFS called all the time, you know, and nothing happens. But it helps to have that record, you know, so definitely.
Yeah, and their goal is definitely to put a child in the home, if that's a possibility. So, yeah, I didn't mean to disparage DCFS. I think they've changed a lot. I was just hoping that, you know, 'cause that does start a more formal process for that call.
Now, the parent, whoever is taking care of the child, may not be educated on how to take care of an asthmatic child. There's a lot of times that people just don't know how to do it,
Right.
or what to do about it. So the only thing they know how to do is rush him to the hospital when he's
Right. Yeah. When
it's in crisis.
It's really terrifying. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It makes me feel like if there's a way to ultimately get in front of the caregivers, it's an opportunity for motivational interviewing, right?
Training.
Also, with university, with Healthy Youth, we're partnering with Green and Healthy Homes, and we can actually go in and do education and even provide HEPA filters and HEPA vacuums, and sometimes even tear out carpet, change the AC to a new one that has filters. You know, they can do pretty big home improvements, and even just putting a HEPA filter in there and helping them understand that, yes, taking your everyday medication helps you feel well and stay out of the hospital. We've seen some really good results.
Oh, good.
With that.
That part of the health department.
Right.
Okay, and right now, don't they have incentive of right now, because they're trying to get people to make awareness that you have 5 visits, and every visit you get like a gift card to Smith.
Yeah.
So it's like a $5 gift card, so at the very least, that might actually motivate them, because then they're actually getting money.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I need to help you implement one of those things, but I can't.
Right.
I can't have all of it. I can't have one of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've seen it working.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
we do see.
Because I get some discouraged with some of the county programs. So we contact them, we're so excited, they're going to come and do something, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That AFTA program is actually working pretty well.
Oh, great.
The local health department, Tiffany, she's on the ball, and she's going to stay at home.
yeah, she's the incentive. And I'm really impressed.
And she's
Yeah.
really awesome stuff.
And they'll clinical is the provider as well.
Yeah, so, she also reports back to the provider in the clinic, what she did and what needs to be done. So, I would support it.
I think we have some on that link from our asthma module. We can make sure that gets in the notes as well. Good, okay. So the first step is get in contact with them. Yeah. And then it sounds like there's some good options potentially. Great, okay. Well, for purposes of time, I will get back to our agenda, but you guys just should know that if you have difficulties, you can email the list. You can email me to email the list. If you want to try and connect with folks and ask for some help between meetings, that's what we're here for. So don't hesitate. Another thing that we wanted to do, and of course we're a little short on time now, but is kind of introduce an additional opportunity in these meetings to mention when you've had some good things happen too. Sometimes it sounds like we sort of focus on, oh, I can't figure out what to do, the family's so tough. Let's talk about the positives as well. So if you do have some wins, we'd love to hear about them. We're just introducing this idea today, so there's no pressure, but think about that in coming meetings. If you guys have been instituting some new processes in your organization and they're working, or you've learned some great lessons that you could share, we'd love to hear about those. And we'd love to hear if you're instituting any motivational interviewing techniques. I attended a training on giving and receiving feedback the other day, and it was so interesting how it's so similar. They talk about when you're open to feedback, you say things like, tell me more. And so it's a little bit reversed, right? You're asking for something that might improve you in that regard. But it's the same idea. So if you start to practice some of these things, and I've started trying to, instead of asking the closed questions, it's just require a yes or no answer. So rephrasing those just in my kind of daily things. I by no means motivational interviewing specialist or anything like that, but it does, you get different information back. You get better information back if you say, oh, that's interesting, can you tell me more about that, and let them give you the details from their point of view because of that yes or no. So we'd love to hear if you guys are trying to do the state.
You know, actually, just yesterday, we got in at my home visit, and they had 4 kids, actually. They just had a brand new 2-week-old that I didn't even know about. And, but she had me over anyway. So the dad does smoke, and I could see in previous notes, doctors had said, you know, encourage him to quit smoking. But afterwards, I was like, you know, I really did get to use those motivational interviewing techniques, and it was really great because I was able to say, well, it sounds like from what you're saying that you know, you do want to quit, but here's your barrier. So if we were able to reach this barrier, it might get you a step closer, you know, and it was really open. It was really nice.
Wow. So not so stressful, perhaps?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody feels better at the end of that. Oh, that's great. Okay. We love to hear these things. So yeah, let's hear more of those. Oh, so I'm gonna skip past this. We'll put information on our email that goes out after the meeting about some things going on with the portal. And we're actually, it's not Ashley today, but I left this slide in place because Ashley put together this great presentation that we're fortunate to have Linda Smith present to us today. And Ashley had an issue come up, so she's not able to be with us this morning. But I don't want to take any more time away from Linda. So let's get to her PowerPoint now, and we'll talk about IEPs and Section 504. All right, Linda, I think you're good to go, and you can just use these arrows to illustrate, okay?
And I appreciate being able to come and present. I'm going to see if this works. Okay, we'll use the arrows. My name is Linda Smith, and I'm with the Utah Parent Center. I'm going to say, as I do this presentation, please ask your questions. How many of you really understand the difference between IDEA and the Individualized Education Plan? We use a lot of acronyms in education, and Section 504 plans. A couple of you do. Yay! Oh, a few of you do. I was going to say even the educators do not understand this. We just did a webinar with the State Office of Education and had the 2 specialists come and do that webinar. So you can review it online with those 2 specialists, by the way. And the majority of people that signed up for that webinar were educators. Still trying to grip this, the difference between Section 504 plans and IEP plans. So we're going to go through those differences today. First of all, I want you to know that both of them have what's called child find in both laws. And what child find is the educate, who has the responsibility, if they're aware that this child has a disability, or they suspect that the child might have a disability, they are required under the law to see if this child needs services. And so if the parent comes in and says, you know what, my physician has said they have ADHD, or they have asthma, or different things, the school really is required to see if this is impacting their education in some way, and to check and see if they need some type of help in school and they need a Section 504 plan or an IEP. Now, this does not happen all the time, and so you might want to remind yourself that the school is responsible to at least look into this. Now, that does not mean that the child will necessarily qualify for a Section 504 plan or for special education services, because the child might be doing just fine in school. Just because they have a disability or a health care problem does not mean that they need specialized services. They might be doing perfectly fine in school. The other thing that both laws have is that
they are allowed to have free appropriate services, public education, which is what FAPE is called, the free appropriate public education. And that means with the early intervention services, which are from birth to age 3, the parents can pay for those services. They have a co-payment, or they can pay on a sliding fee schedule. But the minute that they start preschool services at age 3 on, parents now are not charged a fee. So all services are free from that time forth. And that's whether it's on a Section 504 plan or on an IEP. And I'm surprised how many parents do not realize that. They assume that they're still going to have to pay on a sliding fee schedule for preschool services. So that's something you might want to make your parents aware of, because I'm constantly reminding parents of that. So both of those laws have that. Now, they are 2 separate laws. And so that's something you might want to make your parents aware of, that those are 2 distinct separate laws. So what is the difference? The one, an IEP comes under what's called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And I'm going to use acronyms again. The easy way to say that is IDEA, so IDEA. And the other one is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. One, IDEA is a special education law, and it's very distinct. It is special education services, so it's related services, and there can be accommodations under IDEA, just like Section 4, and related services, whatever special education services the child needs, specialized instruction, whatever services are needed. Under Section 504, it's a Civil Rights Act. So it's the idea of students having equal access and opportunity to the same education as their non-disabled peers. So it's being able to have that access to the same education. And so I like the example, sometimes you hear the parent calling and saying, well, my child was told that they couldn't go to the field trip where everybody was told that they could go swimming. Because of my child's disability, they were worried that this child would have problems going and swimming. Well, no. Under Section 504, it doesn't matter the medical condition. They can't. It's an equal right, equal access, civil rights law, that this child has just as much right as their non-disabled peers to have the right to go on that field trip. So that's the logic between Section 504. So whatever accommodations, whatever needs to happen in that field trip, whatever needs to happen in that classroom, for that child to have the same access to the school curriculum, to be able to understand what's happening in the classroom, that's what's happening in Section 504. So does that make sense to you? So that's the idea between Section 504. So the child can succeed in the regular classroom. It's what tools need to happen to be able for that child to access their education. So think accommodation versus specialized instruction. So who is eligible? Under special education law, there's 13 categories that a child must qualify under. And they're very broad categories. But it's one of the 13 categories. And the other thing is it must impact their educational performance, and they must need specialized instruction. So more than what the general education classroom can provide under special education. Under general education, they need that specialized instruction to be able to benefit. Under special education. In under a Section 504 plan, the definition is very different, and I love it because it's so much broader. And Congress did that on purpose. They purposely said, we want a broad definition that includes all students. And the other thing I want to say about Section 504, special education, the law, IDA, only goes from birth to the time they leave the school system, public school system. So when they graduate with a high school diploma or exit out at age 22. Section 504 goes from birth through adulthood. So they wanted something that was very broad. The interesting thing is the courts were starting to rule and saying, well, if you have asthma, if you have an inhaler, we're not counting that as a disability. If you have ADHD and you take medication, we're not going to count that as a disability. So the last time that Congress redid everything, they said, no, we're going to broaden it back out again. And so when they did the definition the last time, they re-broadened it out and said, no, court, we're going to include everybody again. And I love that Congress did that. So the definition is very broad. It's basically any physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. Now, for education, the disability must interfere with the child's ability to learn in the general education classroom. That's not part of the general broad term under the federal law. That's just for education. And we'll go even further into the details of what the law says farther into this presentation. So that's just a little bit about the definition of Section 504. So who creates the plan in school? In school under IDEA, the IEP team, there's a very distinct team that does this. And there are required members. There has to be the parent, the general education teacher, the special educator, school psychologists, or specialists who can interpret evaluation if there's been a new evaluation done, and then somebody from the district or the school that can say that, we call them the LEA, that has the authority to say, yes, these special education services are going to be provided. And those are required members. Somebody can't walk out in and out of the meeting and say, oh, I'm just here to sign and then I'm leaving. So if you hear a parent say, well, the principal came in for a second and then they left, tell the parent no. They need to all be there during the meeting. Now, Section 504 is a lot looser. There's not a lot written. So the different court decisions and the Office of Civil Rights is starting to rule on a lot more information. And the information they're ruling on is saying follow the type of things that are written in IDA, interesting enough. But the team is basically created by people that are familiar with the child and the evaluation data. And it might include, now interesting enough, there is nothing that says it has to include the parent. So our State Office of Education has, in their guidelines, has said include the parent, which only makes sense to me. The general education teacher, the school counselor, the principal, or administrator. Now notice it can include the school nurse, especially should include the school nurse if there is some type of something medical that needs to be written down, and the student or individual, especially if there's a health care plan that it absolutely needs to include a school nurse. So there's a variety of people, and our state office has said, yes, it needs to include a parent. So any questions on those team members?
and the difference there.
Guys, opinion okay, or discussion items?
Who can, yeah.
Them on the other day that they're and so she was like, so who's going to then the child that has Title IV, but our doctor's not. So she said, did I ask you to be in Title IV? And I said, no, I didn't know. But
Yeah.
I said the principal, but there's so many different teachers and stuff, so, and it's a brand new environment, so it's not like they know this child there at all. Could the old teachers be involved at all?
Yeah, an old teacher can be involved, kind of like a transition. They can have an old teacher involved. I usually do recommend that it be a new teacher in the middle school, even if they do not know the particular student, because they'll know the environment in the middle school, and you want to start getting that happening. And somebody that student's going to have, because the middle school is such a different environment. And make sure, the thing that I found in middle school, the hardest thing for my son was making sure all the different teachers, because you now have 7 teachers, make sure that as you're talking in that section 5014, for me it was the when, who, where. Who's going to make sure that all 7 teachers receive the list of accommodations? How is that going to be done? When is that going to be done by? Who do I contact? So I'm not contacting all 7 teachers if that's not being implemented.
So Jackie, maybe like, like never really get a counselor. Would that be maybe the counselor?
That's why you want to discuss that. So you know exactly who on that team. Yeah. It depends on the school. For me, it was the vice principal, interesting enough. The schools, there's usually a pre-referral team, and there is a Section 504 coordinator in every school. And a lot of times it is the vice principal. Sometimes it's the special education person that's wearing both hats. So you want to find out who it is, and it can be a different person. And unfortunately, the Section 504 coordinator, a lot of times in the school, doesn't know a lot about Section 504. And sometimes they know a lot about Section 504. So it just depends. And you should also know that there's a District 504 coordinator if it's not a charter school. So if you're having problems in the school, the parent can always go up to that District 504 coordinator if it's not a charter school. But yeah, a lot of times they wear different hats. So know that, but definitely have the parents start asking those questions, following through more than just the meeting, but at the meeting start following through, because those are normal things that people think about. Well, who am I going to go to?
And then is Section 504 coordinator the right term?
Yeah.
Is it important?
Section 504 coordinator is the right term. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so make sure you get that person's name and their contact information. And I always have the parents ask too, how do you want to be contacted? Do you want me to call you? Do you want me to email you? How long should I wait? When should I expect a response back from you? You know, 1 day, 2 days. I know you're busy, but and the other question I always ask is if I'm having issues with the teacher, are you going to provide training to show them how the accommodations are going to work so they don't feel overwhelmed? Just those type of things to put it in their mind at the meeting.
And the other thing I talk about, prep with, is like field trips in grade school. Instead of waiting till the field trip and then there's a crisis, I suggest at the beginning of the 504 meeting at the beginning of the year, discussing, okay, this is an issue, let's discuss field trips now. So you can start thinking about the support that you're going to have to start thinking about, because field trips are usually near the end of the year or during the year, that you're going to have to start working to put in place for 504. So we don't have a crisis that week. All of a sudden you're thinking about, oh, I have to get a nurse to me on the bus or whatever it takes. Yes.
So the IEP or 504 funds, do those automatically transfer when kids go from elementary to middle school? Or middle
Yes.
school to,
Yes.
okay. So that just goes along with their records.
Yes. And they recommend an IEP automatically is looked at every year and changed. 504, there is nothing written in on how often that should be done, but it's suggested that you look at a 504 yearly, like IEP, is best practice on that. So best practice is that. So once again, to the parent, suggest, well, best practice is this. You might want to recommend to the parent that they suggest to the school team. Let's just look at the 504, and definitely before they transfer from grade school to middle school to high school, you definitely want to meet with the team and start looking at that again. Then when they start at the beginning of the school year from one to the other. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm pretty clear on the when someone has something clear going on, but we have had several lately that where the child is just not doing well. They don't have a diagnosis, but they kind of coddle them around, all the way through elementary school, and not like we've had like 3 where the parents are like, so what happens now that we go to middle school? Like, who's gonna babysit them? So is this the kind of person that I can ask for? Like, do I tell the parent, like, get testing through the school and ask for a 504, and then they can be turned down? I just wonder, am I recommending 504s too much?
No. And I'm saying absolutely not. And interesting enough, we see these kids that have been kind of coddled around, and these are the kids that, as the grades keep on going to harder and harder grades, we see them getting referred to special education. They seem to have been able to make it through the lower grades. And we even see kids get referred in junior high and high school, that they've been able to compensate until that point, and then they start crashing. And I've even heard of kids getting diagnosed in college, these kids that are borderline. So what I suggest is, I always suggest that the parents just do a real short no letter, because then somebody can't say, I missed the email, I didn't hear you, which happens a lot, or I just kind of put it off. Requesting an evaluation for special education services or a Section 504 plan, and put the school on notice. And what I say, magic words, is I'm requesting an evaluation for Section 504 for special education services, data handed to the principal.
For them to have a 504, do they have to be evaluated?
They can do, and we'll discuss that. So the answer is in here, but do the formal request by the parent. And then what I will tell you is the school can do one of two things. They can say, no, I don't believe
that this child will qualify. But here's the trick again. Don't let the school give the parent a verbal no. The school needs to get that no in writing, because then the parent has that in writing and they can go up and say, I disagree, I'm going up the chain of command. So if it's a district, then they go to the district 504 coordinator, or they go to the district special educator. If they still who can re-look at that and say, oh no, let's evaluate, or they can say, I disagree, and they can go to the State Office of Education. If it's a charter school, then they have the right to go to the State Office of Education. So you want it in writing. I have talked to so many parents on the phone where the schools just said, no, we think he's done okay. And the parent leaves them, and we get into the next school year, the child's failing, and that child should have been evaluated. So make sure you get that in writing. The parent gets that in writing. Okay, so we talked about who creates the plan. What is the plan? Look at the difference there. In an IEP, there's a whole bunch of things. They talk at the present levels of performance. There's annual education goals. There's the timing of services. Now notice there's accommodations involved. There's modifications, and we'll talk about the difference between accommodations and modifications. But that's actual changes to the expectations to what the child will actually do. Where accommodations are tools that will be used, but the child is still expected to do the same schoolwork. What tests, standardized test participation will happen, and how the child will be included in the general education classroom. Notice in a section 504, and there is a standard, IEP that's written out, certain forms, different things you check. There is no standard 504 plan that's written out that you can look, that you can check. In fact, interesting enough, the law doesn't even say it's best practice to have a written plan. It's not required by the law to have a written plan. I always tell parents to encourage the school to have a written plan, because if the parents had a complaint and went to the Office of Civil Rights, the school wouldn't have anything to show that they've done anything. So it's best protection for the school to have a written plan also. Generally includes specific accommodations and supports and services, the names who will provide those services, and the name of the person responsible for ensuring that that plan is implemented. How often? We asked about how often is that reviewed. For an IEP, every year. And the child is reevaluated every 3 years. For a 504, now this says reviewed at least annually, so every year. Now both of them, by the way, can be, the plan can be reviewed more than once a year as needed. A parent can call at any time and say, I want to hold another IEP meeting or a Section 504 plan. It's not written in stone. Parent has concerns, absolutely it can be reviewed. Things can be added, taken out as needed. And students need to be reevaluated every 3 years. Now, and I don't know where in here, and I think you asked the question as far as evaluation, so I'm just going to answer it because I'm not sure where it is. Evaluation under special education is a very formal evaluation, different things that need to be done. Schools, and in both, and this is something parents don't seem to understand. I get the calls all the time. I've had the doctor do an evaluation of my child. I've had a neuropsychologist do an evaluation of the child, and they've done a great write-up. We have a 20-page write-up of this child. We know everything. I take it into the school. The school says they have to do their own evaluation. In both IDA and Section 504, that is correct. The school is required by law to do their own evaluation. And one of the reasons why is schools are not looking necessarily at medical. They're looking at what needs to be done educational-wise. So they need to know how this disability is impacting their educational needs within the education services. And absolutely, the parents need to bring in the documentation and the reports from the medical side of everything, because that absolutely is going to add more information that is needed. But they need to do their educational assessments also, so they get a full picture of what reading level, everything else. So know that the parents do need to have that done and that it is required under the law to do that. Yeah.
The parents have to live specifically what they want evaluated, for instance.
No.
For IEP, or you have to distinguish the two because most parents wouldn't know that. We
No.
might not even know
No.
that. We might think they just would have a 504 and they would on evaluation maybe find some other learning disability.
Yeah, no, they do not have to list that.
Kids then brought.
Right, right. In fact, the school will be the one that will list that and will come out with where they see, because they're not going to diagnose this child has autism, this child has learning disabilities. That's not their role and responsibility to do a medical diagnosis. Their role and responsibility, if it's under special education, is to list one of the 13 categories for eligibility determination under special education. Theirs is not to determine the medical area. Does that make sense? And so that's another thing we're always talking to parents about, because they'll say, I want the school to diagnose them with autism. And we're always going, no, 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 no. Special education is talking about we're going to determine eligible for special education. And so when they come out with this child's under other health impairment or specific learning disability, they're only determining eligibility categories for educational services. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And that's hard for parents to also understand on the reverse, because if they've got an educational evaluation,
Right.
they think it should transfer into the medical world for insurance purposes. For
Right, right.
No,
Yeah.
But I do often tell them, just request an evaluation, but you might put what specifically you see
Right,
their difficulties, especially if you're getting pushback from the school, saying, no, no, he's doing fine, and you can say, well, he struggles, I've been struggling in these areas.
Right. And I always think it's fantastic to have the two. Like, I'll tell parents, I will tell parents, right, get that school evaluation, and if they see specific learning disabilities or the other impairments, take it to your doctor. So that gives them an idea to start looking in those areas. If the doctor sees specific learning disabilities, attention deficit, share it with the school, so that gives them a piece of the puzzle to start evaluating in those areas. Yes?
Will a child have one or the other of these plans, or would they have, like if you have an IEP, would you?
Okay, good question. If they have an IEP, it will cover Section 504. Now, it's not the reverse. If they have a Section 504 plan, then they only need accommodation, so they won't have an IEP. But that's a really good question. So Section 504 evaluation, however, they will, it's broader. So for Section 504 evaluation, though they do need to do some school observations, it does not have to be a formal evaluation the way it is under IDA. So they can assess the doctor's evaluation, the different things like that as part of the school evaluation, which I think is interesting. Yeah.
And they look at like state scores and things like that.
Do they what?
One of my parents has to take state scores, like this child
Right, and that's all the stuff, they're supposed to look at a variety of assessments, and that's language in both of them, so they should look at SAGE scores, they should look at report cards. One of the things they should look at attendance. Is this child attending or missing a lot? I just worked with a girl that has rheumatoid arthritis. Well, she's missing tons of school, and they weren't doing child find on her. And I was going, what are you guys thinking? This girl's missed tons. You should have been doing child find on her, and it should have been based on her attendance. She's, you know, not keeping up with school because of her disability. And you guys, and it was kind of like, well, she just has this. I'm going, come on, guys. That should have been enough to generate that child find. So, yeah, all those different things should have been looked at. Yeah, yeah. So, a variety of assessments. It doesn't necessarily have to be a formal assessment. So those will probably follow. Parents need to be notified. If there's going to be a formal assessment, parents need to be notified that they're going to do an assessment, and parent consent has to be given. And parents need to sign for that consent. Now, how to resolve complaints. There can be IEP facilitation. The Utah Parent Center can go in and help the parent. We can go to IEP meetings now and be with the parents, so know that we're a resource that we can, parents can call, we can talk through the steps, but we can also attend the IEP meetings with the parent. Under IEP, there's IEP facilitation. There's mediators that can go in. There's IEP facilitators through the State Office of Education also. Under IEPs, there's a formal state complaint. There's a form online that's really easy to fill out. Here at the Parent Center, we will help the parent fill out the state complaint. Under Section 504, we recommend that the parent call the 504 specialist at the State Office of Education. She's fantastic. But there is a formal state complaint through the Office of Civil Rights also. And the Office of Civil Rights has visited at least 5 school districts here in Utah with state complaints. And they've been tending to rule for the parents, which I have been finding interesting. And the rulings have been that way because the changes in the 504 law of lately, the schools have been slow to catch up with those rulings. And so the districts are catching up, I think, finally. But that's been one of the reasons. Funding. There is funding for special education services. 504, interesting enough, there are no federal funds for Section 504. So that is one of the interesting things. Yeah.
So would you recommend that these folks tell their families, encourage their families to contact the Utah Parent Center early in the process? How, I mean, you guys have your limited amount of resources to staff and so forth. We do. But so just happenstance, I've run into a couple of friends or acquaintances in the last month or so, both of whom have been just so frustrated with the IEP process.
Yeah.
One's in Washington, one's in California, and neither of them knew that they could go to their Parent Training Information Center and get help. And so now one probably wants to make a complaint, and the other is thinking that she should get them involved for the next year, but this year they've already done their IEP meeting, and it didn't go very satisfactorily. And so I just wonder, is it helpful to get you guys involved earlier to help avoid some of these things later? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, please, at any stage of the game, get us involved. We can really help just talking to the parents if they're confused about the IEP process, the Section 504 process. I really think it helps to have somebody another parent, talk to that parent and be able to explain, you know what, this is what you're going to, this is what they're talking about. There's so many acronyms. There's so many things. This is a scary process when you're walking in. And it's so confusing when you're going from preschool, from early intervention to preschool, preschool to kindergarten, kindergarten to middle school is really scary. Then the same thing, and just understanding the special education process in Section 504 process is very, very difficult. And then especially if things seem to be escalating and the parent is frustrated, it's great to sit down with the parent. And that's what we're here for, is to sit down before the problem really escalates. I've been spending hours with the parent that was so frustrated that it's escalated up to the district level. And I was having conversations with the superintendent. That's the level it has gotten down up to. When it turned out, when I really met with the parents in person, they didn't even understand the IEP process at all. And we had to go back to basics. And if I had talked to them from the very basics and explained, well, this is what an IEP was, and yeah, the school did this because you didn't show up to IEP meetings, we would have said it would have never gotten to the district level. So yes, please have the parents call.
Yeah, I think very much from district to district or the state law. For instance, I mean, I know you have parent advocates for every district, so they probably understand that district policies and stuff. But say, for example, parent writes a letter requesting evaluation. Is there a time frame before they have to act? I know there's a time frame after they sign the consent to be evaluated, but is there a time frame from when you request evaluation that they have to address that?
Yes, there is. I believe it's 30 days. They have to.
Right, yeah,
right.
And then after 30 days, then you can sign the consent and they have another.
Oh, no. They have to do it in a timely. I'm trying to think what the timeline is. If you request an evaluation, I'm never quite sure on that time frame.
So like in Davis District, after you sign the consent to evaluate,
They need to do it in
they have 45 days to do the
once
evaluation.
right. And I'm not sure on
I've had
the time
parents
before.
like, well, I put in the request to the principal and they're not acting
I
on
would
it.
say if they haven't acted on it within 2 weeks, you need to call and get that acted upon.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a time frame within that, and I could be wrong on that. I would have to go back to my rules and regs.
To evaluate form and turning it in their letter.
Yeah, no, and it might be 30 days. I'm not sure on that. I'm not going to say on that because I'm not sure on that.
There's no mandated.
I don't think there is. I would say if they haven't heard back in 2 weeks, definitely you want to get hold of them and get that done. Now, I will say this, we do have parent advocates in some school districts. We have a parent advocate that helps parents in particular school districts in Davis, Salt Lake, Granite, Canyon, Alpine, Nebo. So we do have parent advocates in those particular school districts. Those are the only school districts that we have particular parent advocates helping parents in those particular school districts. The rest, and then the parent center advocates here cover the rest of the state. So just so you're aware. But we do cover everybody, and the parents are free to call here. But if you have a parent that's in those particular school districts, they can either call here and we will refer them out to those parent advocates. Or if you want to know who they are, you can call us and we will give you those numbers. So you have those individuals. I saw another hand.
I was just going to say, so it's actually federal law. They have 45 days for receiving
From the
consent to, or like a request evaluation?
From the time they request the evaluation, the key is the minute the school hands them the forms to sign for that evaluation that they agreed to evaluate, that's when the 45 school days start ticking, and it's school days.
So when the schools are in session, it doesn't
Right.
have holidays, it doesn't
Right.
have weekends. Yeah, or summer, it doesn't
Right.
track, it doesn't count.
Right.
Well, it does count actually.
It doesn't,
count through the summer.
no. So if
Well, okay.
in school days, so it's when they're in school. So if they signed on May 30th,
Right. But like, they do evaluations through the school, or through the summer.
no.
So,
Not unless the school is a year-round school. They're not going to do an evaluation of staff when the school's in session.
so is that something you're talking to this law then?
Yes.
Okay.
IDEA said that the state could decide whether they wanted to go with 60 days or they wanted
What
to
about
go with school days.
who are like transitioning from like early intervention or like,
Same thing, because the early intervention only goes,
but what if
School
those
days.
dates, so like it's an annual date, so what if those dates fall in the summer? What happens to those kids?
can you tell me, Gina? Because I think early intervention does the same thing, don't they? They don't go year-round.
That they, because the going into the school, it's a whole new IEP, so
Right.
it wouldn't start till the new school year. And even with year-round schools, we're finding that depending on the district, they may or may not do an evaluation.
Yeah, because
Preschool
preschool,
crazy, yeah. That part of it is a resource issue as well.
Okay. So what about kids who are actually doing like extended school year service? So,
they don't do and we just actually investigated that this week. Extended school services are different. They're not going to provide the general IEP services during extended school year.
right.
So they're not going to do evaluations or any of those different things that happen during the school
So
year.
even if a parent requests, so the child is under an IEP and a parent requests a meeting, they're going to dismiss that meeting
Yeah.
until school is
Yeah.
in session?
Yeah.
Is that legal? Can they do that?
Yes, we just checked with the State Office of Education. One of the things is the regular district staff and the regular school staff, the people that would discuss the IEP aren't even there. It's different staff for,
That is incredible. Sorry, I'm not from.
no, you're fine. You're fine, because we checked all that, and because we were having those questions around here going, well, wait a minute, how, because we had a parent that was asking about that, and so we rechecked everything, and yes.
So for like an office who, sorry, I'm like not like.
No, you're fine.
This is like blowing my mind. So for an office who, like, say we get an 18-month-old who has failed their MCHAT in July, and we want to refer them for services.
Well, remember, that's early intervention. Early intervention is different than
So
preschool
let's say we
services.
have a 3-year-old then who
Right.
has like failed their like screening tools, and we want to refer them for evaluation, even though federal law states that you have to, like follow this timeline. Utah doesn't do that.
No, for early intervention, they do.
Well,
It's an early intervention.
If you at their exit at their 3-year-old.
Oh, at their
So
3-year-old.
part of that is the planning on the early intervention side
Right,
as well.
yeah.
Okay.
And part of the issue comes down to the school personnel in Utah, again, unless they're serving in a year-round school, they're only contracted. So that's part of the issue is they're not contracted to work through, even, they have a specific contract for ESY. And so that's where I think some of this is falling. So I know that early intervention has issues sometimes with those kiddos that are exiting at that point, and it's the end of the school year. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the school district and the family as a person's care.
But I do know that early intervention does have those transition meetings and make sure all those evaluations are done before they leave for so it's all ready and in place by the beginning of the preschool year, because I've sat in some of those with the parents. So I do know that all those are done by the time that that child is ready to transition to preschool services in the fall. So by the end of the spring, by the end of the time that those early intervention kiddos are leaving and they're going to transition in the fall to preschool, they've already had that transition meeting because it is required by law to have that transition meeting. They've already been evaluated to make sure they qualify, because once, again, just because they received early intervention services doesn't mean they necessarily qualify for preschool services. They've done all of that, and they're ready to transition into preschool services. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. And then summer, they don't receive services during the summer, and then they're ready. And if you need it online, we do have a handbook, transition from early intervention to preschool. And if you'd like a hard copy, I can get you one afterwards. We do have that transition from early intervention into preschool that answers all those different questions for you, and you can take that with you too. So we do have that, but we do have it online for any of you that have those questions to give to your parents also that you can access. And we have our IEP Handbook online, and we have the Section 504 here. Okay. This one is online also, so parents can access that. But I will also tell you that the Utah Parent Center has a YouTube station, and everything that's on here today is on our YouTube station. So parents or youth can access the actual presentation at any time, and it's just a 1-hour webinar. But we have a lot of other webinars on Section 4 that parents can access at any time. Quite a few different good things, so parents don't actually have to spend a lot of time that they can access that I really, really like. And things on early intervention. So be aware of those. So who is Section 504 available to? Those individuals that, and I think this really applies to healthcare professionals. We have so many kids with healthcare needs that really do not need special education services, that have healthcare needs that do impact that child's educational issues that need accommodations in the classroom to be able to function in the classroom. And I'm sure you can think of cases that you have right now that that child could benefit from a Section 504 plan. And so I want you to go back and think about all the cases that might be something where a child could benefit from a 504 plan that might not be on a 504 plan. Here is some more detailed information about the definition of 504. I want you to look at the major life activities that are listed under there. I mean, Congress really did a broad look and said, when they listed this, and notice there's other under that also, which I thought was amazing, because Congress said we don't want to leave anything out. And I don't know if Ashley, it also included has a record of such an impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment. Now, schools don't usually use these two prongs. They're more for disability discrimination, is where you look at these other two prongs. If a child's been discriminated against, and that could happen on the playground, at school, different things like that. I wish Ashley had, there's also a list, like the other one I had used. You might want to look at the Section 504 definition. That's a long list of medical conditions that basically covered every body function, every medical condition that uses things like. Let me see, I'm not going to go through this one.
when the time of written request is made. So that's 16 full days again to respond. And then it's for 45 days, and then it's another 30 days after that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So more or less, start early. Right, yeah, right, yeah.
You can't start early, you
Yeah.
have to wait till school.
But usually the schools get on it a lot sooner, is what I would like to say, but yeah, that's what the law says. So, and I kind of like this picture here, kind of shows accommodations, because a lot of times you'll get a teacher saying, well, it's just not fair to the other children. So I like that picture there about accommodations. Well, it is fair on the different accommodations. So there are tools and procedures that provide equal access to all students. The idea is they level the playing field for all students with disabilities. And here are the 13 categories under special education law. So you can kind of see what those 13 categories are. And they're very broad. I do have parents that call me upset all the time. How come Down syndrome is not listed? How come this isn't listed? How come dyslexia isn't listed? And I have to explain once again, it's very broad category. These are just examples of what an accommodation is versus a modification. Modifications are something that would be under special education. Accommodations are something that would be under a Section 504 plan. I suggest you look at those, and that will kind of give you an idea of the difference. So I want to thank you for giving me this time. You can kind of always call Gina, or you can call us at the Utah Parent Center. We're kind of one and the same. And if you call either one of us, we'll always transfer you, or we'll call the other person into the office, same office, and we'll field your calls both ways. Please feel free to send parents our way. And once again, if you send a parent to one office, if we feel that both of us need to answer, we'll just do a joint phone call so that the parents get the questions that they need answered either way. And I just want to thank you for letting me spend this time. Any other questions?
I know we're out of time. I have a fast question.
Sure.
So can doctors' offices, when they have to write the letter of diagnosis, typically they'll ask for that for a 504. Can we make recommendations on the 504 letter, like, you know, as the doctor, we feel this patient would, can we or can we not?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
They just want that.
Just like you would want the school to write a letter saying,
Right.
well, we believe this child has autism. No, you cannot. And absolutely, please do not write a prescription saying this child needs a 504 plan or this child needs a special education plan. And these are the things that need to be on that plan.
Just the diagnosis and the...
Just a diagnosis.
Okay. They always have parents ask us, can you tell them? And I'm like, sure, but I don't know if that will.
Yeah.
You can probably highlight, though, maybe in a cover letter, some of the key points that you want to say.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we, you know, in seeing this child for how long, you know, we are seeing some issues with this, and this. That way it's on their radar, but they don't feel like they're having the medical community tell them.
Right. And you could, and absolutely you could say things of, you know, we feel this child, you could suggest not classroom accommodations, but we think this child, you know, this child has asthma. We see that they're probably going to need, you know, they need liquids often. They're going to have bathroom breaks. Those type of things. You're not saying in the classroom or whatever, but you're listing types of accommodations that you see that this child is going to need.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're giving them ideas of accommodations, but
But not telling them.
in the classroom. Don't say in the classroom.
Recommendations, but not,
But,
okay.
yeah,
Okay,
but
thank you.
absolutely give them ideas about this child's going to need frequent bathroom breaks. They need frequent liquid. They need, you know, and give those ideas of the things that, so the school can go back and look and go, oh, okay, we're going to need to
one more request for all of you. Will you please fill out those blue evaluations for this piece of it? Since we're federally funded, we're required to constantly improve.
Thank you, Gina. And any other questions you have? I don't know if you want me to go overtime, or you can ask me.
Yeah, I think it's all right, maybe to allow them to talk to you on their way out.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that okay? Yeah. And thank you for that question. That was a really good question.
So I will tell you that the two friends of mine that I heard about this from lately, what I've heard in their kind of stories is this frustration that could have been helped by having an advocate there at the IEP meeting, where they're starting to get really heated, and that doesn't ever help. So having someone like there at the meeting who understands and can speak on their behalf sometimes. And then the other one was that she was ready to file those complaints, and it just could have been handled a lot earlier, and would have been so much better. So involve the Utah Parent Center for sure. So really quickly, I sent out a session asking if there was interest. I got 6 replies. They were all interested, but we would like to get more replies. So I'm going to send that out again. I'll reformat it a little bit so it'll be easier to respond to. Sorry, my other one wasn't very well thought through. So watch for that, and I really appreciate your responses if you haven't already responded. And one of the key questions there has to do with whether or not your extended team might be interested in joining you, or members of that team. Not just for you guys, but for your organization as well. And then our next meeting is July 20th, and it'll be here again. And we're going to be doing some exercises using the Medical Home Portal list features, as well as just showing you a little bit more about the portal that you may not be as familiar with. And so we'd like to ask you to bring your own laptop, UIOL. If you don't have one, that's fine. We'll have several that we can let you use during the day. But if you have one, I think it's twofold. One, we just don't have that many to hand out. But the other is, if that's the thing that you're using on a regular basis to do your work, then it's your own environment, and it makes